Hello. Hello, hello. Fulcrum, can you help us with the microphone up here? Thank you. Samantha Gifty Bukari, Consul General, Ghana, representing the High Commissioner for Ghana. Please, can you put your hands together for her? Okay, and then we'd like to also recognize Professor Grace Olasayinde, the Chairman of Covenant University Health Research Ethics Committee, representing the Vice Chancellor of Covenant University, Professor Abiodun Adebayo. Please put your hands together for her. The first UNEP Africa Adaptation Gap Report Series, he also spearheaded the conceptualization and creation of the ecosystem-based adaptation for food security assembly, Iba Fosa, as well as an individual who has worked as a research fellow at Trinity College, University of Dublin, and a lecturer at Nottingham University. He has a PhD in environmental change and policy from the same university, as well as being a recipient of the prestigious African Environmental Hero Award 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Dr. Richard Munan. The more you clap, the faster it will come. But please watch your steps. I'm very sure we have insurance, but we don't want anything happening to you in Nigeria. You're welcome.
The MC, thank you very much. The Honorable Commissioner for Health, Lagos, Professor Akin Bayomi, the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Olusegun, all government officials, UN sister agencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. A wise person does not fall down the same hill twice. This African proverb underscores the essence of our gathering here today. We are here to learn from the past and from each other towards a more effective biosafety response to our continent. 6 days ago, the United Nations Environment Programme released the 13 emissions gap report, which shows that the world is heading towards a dangerous warming of 2.8 degrees. But why should this matter? It should matter because the science is unequivocal. It is unequivocal that emissions are aggravating 60% of all infections, diseases, from hepatitis, pneumonia, to malaria and anthrax. All these are exacerbated by climate change. And this is truly scary if we consider the recent memories of the disruptive power of infectious diseases. Honorable Commissioner, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, our lives were turned upside down just 2 years ago as the worst pandemic of the century hit. Two hypotheses were advanced. Yes, they were about the origins, and the first was to characterize as arising from the natural foreign zoologic storm. The second was more reprehensible and characterized as an accidental dispersion of a laboratory-acquired infection. But regardless of its real source, high biological contamination from one district or one country became a global security threat is what is more important, resulting to a complete shutdown of economies with unprecedented economic repercussions, provided a lesson of a lifetime. Lest we forget, losses to the global economy exceeded by over 60%. In just 1 year, the global economy lost over $700 billion in capital availability and $6 trillion in trade opportunities. In the African continent, we endure up to 50% loss of jobs and 40 million more people slip into extreme poverty. But had the contamination been contained at its source, at its nearest provincial or state border, or had Africa been better prepared with more contextual response protocols, the risk and liabilities would have been much less. But more encouraging is that the globe was quick to learn. More encouraging is that we saw the principles of One Health being prioritized. We quickly saw the power of an integrated response taking shape. The the narrative shifted towards the power of nutritious food in building our immunity, combined with environmental actions in keeping potential disease vectors away as critical complement to the standard human medicine interventions. These are the building blocks of One Health. They are the building blocks of One Health that should become the strategic push underpinning all biosecurity responses from now on. It's inextricably related to the three planetary crises which the United Nations Environment championed: climate change, nature and biodiversity loss. Pollution and waste form the backbone of UNEP's work. We work with state and non-state actors to limit global temperature rise to 1.5, working with youth and over the 80% of Africans work in the informal sector and delivering solutions that are actually reversing this detrimental impact of mentioned today. We are working to deliver nature-based solutions that reduce the impact of agricultural sector on our environment by substituting chemical inputs with nature-based ones that do not destroy the environment. We are working to minimize the release of biological pollutants that drive infections such as antimicrobial resistance, for which Africa has the highest prevalence globally. Honorable Commissioner, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the diverse professions represented here today show our unity of purpose to actually tackle an issue that needs each and every one of us involved. It shows unity of purpose in leveraging the collective strength of each and every one in the entire continent and the entire world, so that at least we can put these challenges on the run of prosperity into the topic of progress, because we know that when spiders unite, they can tie down the lion. Yes, this conference showcases this. It showcases that our unity of purpose can tie down the lions of zoonotic infections, can tie down the lions of antimicrobial resistance, the lions of malaria and foodborne diseases. And as a result of doing this, we will strengthen health security and mitigate biological threats in the continent. I thank you. Have already been established. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, learning expands souls. This African proverb underscores the essence of where we are today, and we've heard from speaker after speaker, and we are learning in the course of listening to speaker after speaker, but we are here to learn and expand our knowledge on solutions to better expand and tackle these biosecurity threats in the continent. To most people, learning is very, very crucial. The learning environment and the source of many anxious moments. Specifically during our school days, the few minutes that preceded the announcement of our results, so many panicking, because either they have not scored good marks or they have scored just average. As practitioners and stakeholders of the biosecurity field, each and every one of us here today bring something to the table. We have been under testing for quite a very long time, and the past 2 years have tested us. The World Health Organization scores Africa's biosafety and biosecurity capacities as an average of only 32%. This is a failing grade if we were to score ourselves out of the 100%. And this failing grade therefore means that it's an alarm, considering the fact that biosecurity threats in the continent are only escalating. As I did allude in the morning today, the United Nations Environment Program Emissions Gap report that was released just 5 days ago showed that we're heading towards an apocalypse. We're going to see droughts and floods, which are already evident today, plunging millions of people into suffering, because just a fraction of a degree means suffering for our brothers and sisters in communities. It means pain. It means death of our brothers and sisters. And as a result of this, we're going to see zoonotic diseases increase by up to 63%. This has happened in the last decade. And Africa holds an enviable position of having the highest incidences of antimicrobial resistance. And as we speak today, under the stage 2 in which we are in, 1.4 million, 4.1 million people across sub-Saharan Africa will die as a result of antimicrobial resistance. That's what the data is telling us in the next 27 years. And studies have shown that antimicrobial resistance is accelerated by higher temperatures. And we have foodborne diseases as well. And Africa holds the world's highest per capita incidence of these diseases. And as we're speaking today, pathogens that cause foodborne infections are sensitive to temperature. Because warm, wet weather conditions stimulate bacterial growth that we know, but with Africa already warming twice as fast as the rest of the world, only shows that this risk will escalate. But hidden behind this, statistics are real-life stories. This is not theater, this is not just abstraction. It is about real-life stories across the entire continent enduring this massive risk. We are seeing stories of children who are contracting malaria, which is not news to each and every one of us. We are seeing young brothers and sisters of ours hospitalized in intensive care unit. We see stories of families who have contracted cancers, and the rest is only increasing. Cumulatively, what we know is that considering that biosecurity threats cost Africa over $400 billion US in damages every year, the agency for solutions therefore cannot be overstated. Because less than 2 years, we already heard about this. COVID hit our doorsteps, and we saw the reaction to this. But what we understand, as we heard earlier on today, is that we need to look at response measures differently. And that is why the building blocks of One Health becomes very, very important. And this should underpin our security solutions as we handle it. But our entry point from this perspective, the UN Environment Program, which is part of a quadripartite, the World Health Organization, Food and Agricultural Organization, and the World Animal Organization, is addressing One Health, but from the UN Environment perspective, One Health is inextricably linked to the three planetary crises of climate change, of biodiversity loss, of pollution and waste. And as I said, our engagement in One Health is premised on two fundamental aspects. The first is that we have the environment, which is actually acting on one front as a reservoir for these infections and infectious diseases. On the same, the environment acts as a solution, and therefore we cannot be able to address this biosecurity threat without putting the environment at the center. Because let's face it, the reality that we face, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, is that solutions in addressing this triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution needs to be delivered and put at the center of addressing these biosecurity threats. Accordingly, we are working with state and non-state actors, because state alone cannot address the issues, and non-state actors alone cannot address the issues. We need the collective force of each and every one. But more critically, what do we need to do to address these realities through the environment lens in a holistic way? Each and every country, with Nigeria included, have put ambitious climate action plans, what we call the nationally determined contributions. It is estimated that global emissions need to be reduced by 45% between now and 2030, not just in 80 years from today. If not, we are going to go above 1.5 degrees. And as I've said, over 83% of Africa's nationally determined contributions include greenhouse gas reduction targets to ensure that we can be able to reduce emissions. But what we need to understand is that Africa is a negligible emitter, emitting just between 3 to 4%, but it is bearing the brunt of this. But at the same time, these climate action plans that are approved by countries have not been turned into investment plans. 72% of Africa's NDCs have not been turned into investment plans. What does this mean? Attracting investment to implement and build climate resilience is still part of it. Some of these plans are still foundational, not unconditional.
Countries therefore need to urgently develop such investments as part of the strategy in One Health towards making sure that we reduce the risk of infections and at the same time also address and create opportunities. For example, simple climate action solutions like solar dryers can actually do wonders. Our mothers in communities today grow their vegetables and the tomatoes they get wasted, or they dry it in open drying and they get contaminated. And this is an avenue not only to contaminate them but cause diseases. But the development of solar dryers are critical to powering value addition. And we have tested it across the continent, including here in Nigeria, where the reduction of aflatoxin is resulting in 30 times higher incomes from the informal sector and at the same time creating opportunities for the youth. It therefore means that the first action to take is investment plans of climate action must capture these aspects, and this will go a long way to create opportunities for young people and at the same time enhance community purchasing power to enable them to afford healthcare services. And that takes me to the second point, which is to unlock the power of market incentives. We cannot ignore the importance, the power of our standards regulators. In every country across the continent today, it plays a very important role in providing market pull factors. For example, when it comes to food safety, dehydrating food to reduce moisture content is critical to prevent the growth of mold and toxins and other aspects that are related to biosecurity waste. Using nature-based inputs such as fertilizers and pesticides are crucial in lowering the food safety. Because tests have already been conducted across the continent, leveraging on this solar dryer, and we are helping countries to develop, especially working with young people and the informal sector. And this, across countries in the continent, shows how important these solar dryers are. Expanding this model, therefore, becomes critical as part of One Health response to biosafety.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are going for a tea break. As soon as we are back for the next 10 minutes, tea break for the next 10 minutes.
Very important, and I will take about 2 minutes to talk about this. I have never ever understood, born and bred in this continent, we grew up in the informal sector. Our mothers and brothers, 80% of the entire African continent today are in the informal sector. But sometimes we miss out this cruciality, the informality of the African continent, which is very, very key. And when we discuss solutions, sometimes it's as if these people are not crucial constituencies when it comes to climate change, when it comes to other aspects that are very, very crucial. The informality of Africa is important, and there can be no climate change response that will ignore the 80% of Africa's informal sector and will result in building resilience. That can't happen. It therefore means that the 80% of Africa's working population engaged in the informal sector must become the bigger part of our strategy in any response when it comes to biosecurity, when it comes to climate change. Because ignoring them will mean that we're actually ignoring the public that we need to strengthen. Tapping informal sector as critical stakeholders becomes very key in building our safety measures, and therefore we must leverage on them. We worked across the continent, in Uganda, in Kenya, in Cameroon, in Nigeria, in Zambia, and we're working, leveraging the informality of Africa, which has strength. The local government structure. Africa is not a one data statistic point. I hear some people call Africa a country. Africa is not a country. Africa is a continent with over 1.3 billion citizens, with unique peculiarities, with local government structures, like cooperatives, like the government structures of kingdoms that are very, very key. We've leveraged this, and we're actually decentralizing these environmental solutions that are mentioned here today, from Cameroon, Uganda, Nigeria. We're developing nature-based inputs, fertilizers, and leveraging the structures of cooperatives. It therefore means that biosafety efforts need to consider this dimension to complement One Health. And that takes me to the fourth point, to the fifth point. But before the fifth point, Africa is a youthful continent. You can only compete from a position of strength. And Africa's strength is her youth. But not just her youth by name, but her youth when they are given the requisite skills to be able to not only engage in devising this One practical solution, but become part and parcel of the process. Their ingenuity, their creativity, their vibrancy, their passion cannot be ignored in the fight against making sure that we win climate change, we win on the biosecurity front. And the last point, data for policy. Data is important. Data is the new currency of now. And targeted incentives are critical, but only critical when there is data to inform the gaps that we need. Targeted incentives are critical to addressing the bottlenecks and tapping into the pockets of success stories that do exist across our continent today. Working with the young people, working with the informal sector. What we have seen is that the data, especially from solar reliable informal standards, can actually result to incentives to drive this transformational development and leveraging our educational sector, like for example the data from solar drying in Nasarawa State here in Nigeria that have helped inform the development of a climate entrepreneurship curriculum in Nasarawa State University. That's the way to go. And this is something that is quite very, very important. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, our collective capacity is greater than the magnitude of our challenges. And the problems, if we leverage them from the opportunity lens, will not only create opportunities, but will empower our continent. Therefore, let's join hands and build this consortium of One Health, knowing fully well that there are no shortcuts to the top of the palm tree, because tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Man. That was very passionate. I like the way my speaker, presents not just the academic aspect of it, but the passion with which they deliver that.